Do you want to play sultry jazz piano? You know the type of piano you'd hear if you walked into a jazz lounge? Well, in today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to play in this style in just 3 simple steps. You're going to learn what I call the lounge chord progression, 4 amazing sounding chords that are super easy to play. You're going to learn the best scale to use if you want to improvise in this style, plus 2 essential beginner improvisation techniques and 3 intermediate level improvisation techniques. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, step number 1 to playing in the lounge piano style is to play the lounge piano chord progression, which goes like this. Sound amazing, and it's actually not very hard to play. So first I'm going to teach you this left hand chord progression, and then I'll show you exactly what you can do in your right hand. But before we do this, if you're enjoying this lesson, please hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more videos just like this. So what is the lounge chord progression? Well, the technical name for this chord progression is called the minor turnaround chord progression, and it is a very cool progression that's used on lots of different jazz tunes in a minor key. So in just a minute I'll show you the exact cool crunchy chords that I'm playing, but first I want you to understand the kind of basic idea of the minor turnaround chord progression. So the way this chord progression works is you start on C, this is the root, we're going to build a minor chord on C, then you go to the A, this is the 6th note in the key of C, so we're going to build a chord on this note, the D, this is the 2nd note in the key of C, and then the G, this is the 5th note in the key of C. So this progression is a 1, 6, 2, 5 chord progression. Now you could play simple chords on each of these notes. So on the 1 chord you could play like a C minor. On the 6th chord you could play an A diminished. This E flat comes from the C minor scale. The 2 chord would be a diminished chord. And then the 5 chord, you could play it as a normal major chord. But jazz musicians will play these chords in a much more interesting way by adding some notes. So these are the chords that I want to teach you. All right, the first chord is this beautiful C minor 6/9 chord. Check it out, E flat, G, A, and D. Okay? Now, when you first play this chord, you might be thinking, hey, this does not look at all like a C minor chord. And you're right. We're actually adding some notes to this chord. This is what jazz musicians do when they want to make chords like a C minor sound extra jazzy. So what we're doing is we're adding an A. We call this the 6th because it's 6 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 above the root. And then we're also adding a 9. And we call this the 9 because it's actually 9 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 above the root. So this chord is called a C minor 6/9 chord. And these extra notes that I'm adding are called chord extensions. These are common notes that jazz musicians will add to a chord to make it sound jazzy. So that's the chord we're playing, C minor 6/9, and we're taking the root out. You can put the root on the bottom and then jump up to the chord, and it'll sound really nice. All right, second chord sounds amazing. We have G, A, C, and E flat. And this is actually called an A minor 7 flat 5. And earlier when I taught you the minor turnaround chord progression, I said you could play a simple triad, which is 3 notes on this chord, but it sounds a little jazzier if you add the 7th, 1, 3, 5, and 7, the G. Okay, so I'm just inverting these notes, and again, this is the 6th chord in a minor turnaround chord progression, or what I call the lounge chord progression. All right, the next chord is my favorite chord in this progression. Check it out. Doesn't that sound awesome? We have F sharp, B flat, C, and F. And you'll really appreciate this chord if you grab a D on the bottom and you jump up to this chord. Doesn't that sound awesome? So how does this chord work? Well, the next chord in the minor turnaround chord progression is your D chord. And recall earlier that I taught it to you as a D diminished chord. But something that a lot of jazz musicians will do is you can take a chord like your 2 chord and you can turn it into a dominant 7 chord. And so a dominant 7 chord is this. Okay, so that's kind of step number one. Step number two to make this chord sound amazing is to add two notes which we call chord alterations. And there's two notes that sound amazing on a dominant chord. The first is the F natural, which we call the sharp 9, and then the B flat, which we call the flat 13. Okay, these are chord alterations. And so I'm going to sort of revoice the chord. I'm going to put the B flat down here. I'm going to take the fifth out of the chord, which is pretty common to do. And there is my super hip D7 chord with a flat 13 and a sharp 9. Okay, and the way I recommend you play this is you jump from the D on the bottom up to the chord, and it sounds amazing. All right, the fourth chord in this progression also sounds super cool. Check it out. Doesn't that sound really crunchy and jazzy? We have F, B flat, B, and E flat. Okay? Now, you might be thinking, Jonny, that sounds super cool, but isn't the next chord in this progression a G chord? How do we go from a G to this? Well, if you take your 5 chord in this chord progression, I said it's a G major, it's very common on your 5 chord to make it dominant by adding a 7th. Okay, so this is a G dominant 7. Well, remember what I said earlier, on a dominant 7 chord, you can add two really cool notes, our chord alterations. And so for this chord, I'm going to add the sharp 9 and the flat 13. And so we're just going to rearrange the chord a bit. We're going to put them down here on the bottom. We're going to move that F down to the bottom here, and we'll get rid of the 5th. We'll pull that out. And then there is our very cool G7 chord. You'll really appreciate this if you jump from the root up to the chord. And the name of this chord is called the G7 flat 13 sharp 9. By the way, if you want to learn more about chord extensions and chord alterations, you can in our chord extensions course and our chord alterations course. I'll put a link to both of those below. All right, let's go ahead and play these chords together with the included backing track, and then I'll show you what you can do in your right hand. Here we go. And here it is. Have some fun with the rhythms. All right, you're sounding great, and are you ready for step number 2? In this step, I'm going to show you how to improvise some really sweet jazz lines. Okay, in your right hand. And this section is for players more on the beginner side. If you'd consider yourself an intermediate level player, you can skip ahead to step number 3, where I show you how to improvise some great sounding jazz lines. All right, players on the beginner to intermediate side, first we need to start with the best scale to use to improvise. And the best scale to use when you're improvising over this chord progression is your minor blues scale. It is a very cool sounding scale. And what I love about this scale is that it's only 6 notes. And you might be thinking, Jonny, how can I create a really cool improvisation with only 6 notes? Well, I'm going to show you 2 essential improv techniques with this scale in just a minute. But first, let's go over the notes of the minor blues scale. So it's going to start on C. We've got the thumb here. Then we go E flat. We're going to go thumb under to F. Really simple. Then G flat. That's going to be our middle finger. Then the thumb on the G, and then the middle finger on the B flat. Okay, that is it. That is your C minor blues scale. Now, before I teach you these 2 improv techniques, I do recommend that you practice this scale up and down the piano. You can do 1 octave like this, and if you're feeling a little ambitious, you can do 2 octaves all the way up, and so for this you'll want to go thumb on the C, and then you can continue up the piano, and then you can also go down from the high C, same fingering down the piano, right? Basically 3 finger, 1 finger, 3 finger, 1 finger, all the way down to the C. Now you could just play this scale up and down the piano while you play the left hand chords, and it would sound great. But after a while, you're going to want to do more than just play the notes of the scale. And so I want to teach you 2 essential improv techniques. These are really cool things that you can do with your minor blues scale to make it sound awesome, and they're not very hard to play. The first technique I want to teach you is the slide technique, and it sounds like this. That sound amazing, and it's not very hard to play. So for this technique, you're going to slide different notes of the blues scale, and I want to show you what a basic slide is. Okay, notice that I'm hitting 2 notes to create a slide, right? We're sliding from one note to the other. So there are 4 essential slides that you need to know if you want to play in this style. The first one is an up slide to the G. So I'm taking my index finger and I'm grabbing the G flat and I slide up to the G. That's it. Okay? Now I like to slide with 1 finger. You could slide with 2 fingers, but I like to use 1 finger. That way it frees up the top of my hand to add some harmony notes, which I'll teach you later. Okay? So slide number 1. Slide number 2 is a down slide to F, like that. So I'm grabbing the G flat and going down to F. Okay? Really simple. Okay? Slide number 3 is an up slide to the G flat. So you need to use 2 fingers for this slide. Okay, F to G flat, just like that. And the final slide, it's a little bit harder, is the double slide. Okay, basically I'm grabbing F, F sharp, G. And I'm using this fingering, index, middle, middle. So it's a double slide. Okay, but it sounds amazing. So once more, here are your 4 slides. We have an up slide to G, down slide to F, up slide to G flat, and double slide to G. The next technique is the turn technique, and it goes like this. Okay, doesn't that sound great? And turns are actually not very hard to play. So here's how the turn technique works. I'm going to start on the F, and I'm going to turn on this note like that. It's basically F, G flat, F, E flat. Okay, that's a very typical turn that you would play in blues and jazz. And then we come back F, E flat. Okay, that's it. So turn, and then F, E flat. Turn, and then F, E flat. Okay, now you can turn on different notes. You could turn on the E flat like that, or you could turn on the C, right? But the most common one that blues musicians and jazz musicians will use is the turn on the F. All right, let's try these 2 improv techniques with the included backing track, and we're gonna go at a very slow tempo. This is 70 BPM, and we're gonna try mixing our slide technique with our turn technique. Here it is. Let's start with some simple slides. And I'm gonna play these little short lines. Let's do a double slide. Now let's do some turns. Doesn't that sound great? By the way, if you want to learn all of the techniques that I use when I'm improvising with this scale, you can sign up for my free 10-day blues challenge. And in the challenge, you'll get 5 free video lessons to your email inbox where you'll learn my top blues improv techniques. So I'll put a link to the challenge below. All right, step number 3 is for all of you intermediate to advanced level players. And I'm going to teach you 3 essential improv techniques that you can use with your minor blues scale. So if you've skipped to this section, the scale that we're using is the C minor blues scale. It's a simple 6-note scale, and you can play it up and down the piano. Okay, but after a while, it might not sound very interesting if you're just playing the scale up and down the piano. So I'm going to teach you these 3 improv techniques so that you can make this scale sound really interesting. The first technique is what I call the harmonized slide technique, and it sounds like this. Doesn't that sound amazing? And it's actually not too hard to play. So if you're following from the previous section, you learned that you can do slides on the blues scale. You learned that you can do an up slide to G, you can do a down slide to F, you can do an up slide to G flat, and you can do a double slide to G. Well, with this technique, we're simply going to harmonize our slides. So for each slide, instead of playing single notes like this, you're going to put the C on the top to harmonize it. Okay? So now you have that, which sounds really cool and jazzy and bluesy. Okay? So that's our up slide to the G. You can do the same on the down slide to the F, right? Just like this. You can do the up slide to the G flat with 2 notes. You see that? And then you can do the double slide to the G like that. Okay? So once more, here are your 4 slides. Up slide, up slide, and double slide, okay? Now in a moment, I'll show you how to improvise with this, but first I want to teach you the other two techniques. Technique number 2 is the harmonized turn technique, and it sounds like this. Doesn't that sound really cool? And it's actually quite simple to play. So again, if you're following from the previous section, you learned about using turns, like that. And so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna harmonize our turn. Doesn't that sound awesome? So what we're doing is we're harmonizing the C with the F. We do the turn, okay? And then I end F and C, E flat and C. Okay, that's kind of a general way of doing your harmonized turn. Technique number 3 is what I call the gospel connector technique, and it sounds like this. Doesn't that sound amazing? And again, it's actually not too hard to play. So what we're doing is we're playing like a C minor chord, but we're rocking the notes of the chord. So we're playing the top 2 notes to the bottom, and then we go up to an F and A. This is our gospel connector. It's like a chord we'll often have in gospel music, right? Except we're just playing the top 2 notes. It's like an F major chord down to the C. Okay, so once more, C minor, we're rocking, and then F major, F and A down to C, okay? And so this gospel connector technique is a great way of connecting your other licks that you'll play when you're using your harmonized slides and harmonized turns. All right, next we're gonna play these 3 techniques with the included backing track. And by the way, this lesson comes with 4 downloadable backing tracks at different tempos. You can also download the lesson sheet music up here on the top left of the screen. Plus, you can change the key of this entire lesson with the click of one button with our smart sheet music. So I'll put a link to all of that below, and let's go ahead and improvise a little bit with the backing track. Let's start with some harmonized slides. Let's do some harmonized turns. Gospel connector. Let's mix some. Hey, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the lesson, please let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out pianowithjonny.com. We have over 1,000 step-by-step lessons for all playing levels where you'll learn your favorite songs, styles, and how to improvise at the piano. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.